So the session today is about how to network effectively from the start of your doctoral program to the end of your postdoc. Not that you'll necessarily be in the same place doing all those things, and you are coming to this workshop at different points in this continuum. But I want to illustrate some of the strategies or resources and reasons why networking isn't just something that you do at the end of your program or your postdoc as you're thinking about the career next steps. It's something that you can be doing throughout your professional life and throughout the steps that you take to always be advancing your understanding of the resource available to you, the skills that you can be gaining, things that are important to your professional identity. So I really want to sort of touch on some of the strategies that we can use to do that. Knowing that you all come from different backgrounds and disciplines and are at different points in your programs, I'll try to make it applicable to all of you so that you can find something to take away from this presentation. In case you didn't know, I am Dr. Joseph Barber. I'm the Director of Graduate Career Initiatives here at Penn's Career Services. Let's jump into our topics for today. And I think one of the first things to do is to really help set the stage, is to define the terms that we're talking about, because networking can have negative associations for some people as you think about what it is meant to be, or you should be doing, or how uncomfortable it makes you, or whatever that is. But if we really pare it down to what it's trying to do, it's getting answers to questions. Very much like research. Your research, is a way to find answers to things that are hard to find. And networking is just a different approach to finding answers to questions. But those questions are questions that are meaningful to you as an individual. And the questions that you're trying to get answers to are not just about the future version of you. They're about the current version of you as well, the things that you can be doing now and the things that you can be doing moving forward. So the secret to networking is that you really do need a series of questions to guide you. If you're just meeting people, you're not really networking, you're just meeting people. Now that there's overlap between those two things, but it's the questions that really help make this meaningful and manageable, especially if you don't like the concept of chatting with random people. Making it a question-oriented transaction is very helpful. Now, we're going to sort of touch on two versions of networking, sort of passive networking, where you're not actually engaging with a real person, but you're looking at things online, you're reading things, you're looking at resources that are available to you. You're still gaining knowledge and gaining from the experience of others, but without the sort of the interaction. And then there's active networking, where you're much more proactive in finding the right people who have answers to the questions that you have, and getting access to those answers, and then building a relationship with that person because of the interaction that you're having with them. So two different elements here, both are valuable. Ultimately, the most valuable is the sort of the active engagement that you're having with people. So that's going to be the sort of the gold standard of what we're trying to achieve with networking. But to get to that point, some of the passive networking is going to be helpful too. I talked about the idea that you want to have goals, and so because I'm framing this as from the start of your doctoral program to the end of your postdoc, there are sort of three main goals, right? One is I need to get my doctoral degree. Two is I need to get a postdoc, and I need to make the most of the postdoc if that's the path that you're on. And three is I need to get a job. Now, to a certain extent, the job here is sort of probably the most uniform one. So regardless of whether you complete your doctoral program or go to a postdoc, you will still be looking for a job at the end of the time. So this is why in my networking questions list here, the job ones are the most populous in terms of how I've listed them there, because they are the most applicable to everyone who's going to be here. But all these other ones here can be helpful. The things that you're doing right now as a doctoral student or as a postdoc can help you be successful as you apply for jobs, right? So the things that you're building into your own professional development right now will have a knock-on effect to you applying for roles moving forward. So that's really helpful. But even just being able to make the most of your time from a personal wellness perspective, from being able to balance your work perspective, that's also a benefit from the effective networking that you can be doing in the sort of the present time. So these are some of the things that we're going to touch on how to do this, and hopefully demonstrate how you can find answers to these questions. I showed this slide yesterday, if you were part of the workshop yesterday, and I make it all yellow like this because it is really important to sort of understand the benefits of networking. Even though it can feel uncomfortable, it doesn't have to feel uncomfortable for some people. It's so beneficial in terms of being able to really get to answers that are meaningful to you. No one has all the answers. You're not born with the answers. You don't come across them by yourself. Sometimes you really need to learn from the experiences of others so that you can be better positioned to make good decisions for yourself, or to sort of present the skills and resources that you have. So the information gathering part of networking is so critical, but also the not having to reinvent everything yourself every time, right? You can learn from people's best practices, you can learn from their advice. That's part one of networking. Part two is equally important, and that is really being able to practice talking about the things that you do well, practice talking about the value that you bring to an organization, practice really demonstrating the energy that you bring, because energy is, at the end of the day, one of the things that people are looking for when you're doing interviews, right? They know you have the skills, but do you have the motivation or energy or passion to do the things that you're applying to do? And so some of that comes from you just practicing talking in optimistic terms about what you do. And then the last thing is helping others is such a confidence boosting and optimism boosting experience. And by networking and reaching out to people, but also being reached out to by other people and sharing that insight, that's going to be helpful too. So as I'm talking about networking, where you might be a doctoral student reaching out to a postdoc or to a more senior doctoral candidate, think about yourself as that postdoc or as that sort of senior doctoral candidate, and think to yourself, well, how can I look down or not look down, but look back at some of these people who are just starting, and how can I help them? How can I share information that's going to be meaningful to them? Because that will help you to, just in terms of building your own networks and building your own confidence. So, any of this that you're doing to other people, reaching out to, you can also be doing that, looking the other way, as it were. So let's start off with some general timelines. And this is a very arbitrary timeline of sort of what networking looks like. But if we imagine, that there's you at the start of Penn and there's you at the end of Penn, whatever that looks like, could be a long time, could be a shorter time. These are some of the steps that I think you want to be considering as part of your networking strategy, right? Right from the get-go, you want to situate yourself in the environment that you're in. So you need to understand the landscape, you need to understand the resources, you need to understand what's available to you, you need to understand what are good best practices to be successful in your first few years. As a postdoc, as a doctoral student, doesn't really matter. Professional development opportunities look different at different stages, but in many cases, these are the skills that you need to be successful in the role that you are right now. So those could be research skills, technology skills, communication skills, learning how to present, learning how to create a scientific poster, learning how to write a paper or submit a proposal for funding, or whatever that looks like, right? So those are professional development skills that are worth looking into. Around midway through your process, once you've established yourself, that's when you start wanting to think about career next steps. Some of you already know coming in what those might be. Some of you are very much open to different paths that are out there. But those that midpoint is where you've established a sense of where you are, you've made connections throughout campus, and now you're saying, well, what can I do with that, right? How can I leverage my skills? What are the pathways open to me? And that's sort of a long sort of process that's going to span, the rest of your time there. I put them in boxes just to make it easy for me, but these things continue on throughout your time at Penn and onwards. Once you've learned about different career options, the next step is really to say, well, given what I know about these different career fields and know about what they are looking for in candidates, what skills or experiences or knowledge can I build that will position me for those types of positions, right? So you move from professional development in broad terms to skills development that are specific to some of the career paths that are out there. So knowing what those are and knowing how to get those skills is going to be important. Then we sort of shift, to a much more intensive engagement with alumni at the organizations that you might be interested in, and recruiters who might be connected with those organizations to learn more about how to apply and what they're looking for, and to really sort of firm up and cement your idea of these roles. And then finally, sort of leveraging all these relationships that you've been building over time as you are actively applying or actively starting in a new role. Because even once you start in a new role, this sort of cycle starts again, right? In your next job, you're going to do much the same, many of the same steps. Could be, you're looking for a job higher up in that hierarchy, or a job in another organization once you've been there for a few years. But the cycle sort of keeps on going in this way. Now, as a postdoc, it's slightly different, because a PhD or a doctoral student might have a fixed 3, 5, 7-year period of time to work within. Postdocs, many of you will be on contracts that are 1 year, 2 year, they're shorter, and so it doesn't quite work to sort of shrink them down and just have repeating years of those cycles. But the idea here is that you want to sort of be moving through these fairly quickly within a year, so that you have options at any inflection point of your postdoc, right? I certainly know that some postdocs are told with very little notice that their funding isn't going to be continued, and that's, it's a very devastating experience and very hard. But if you've built in some of this networking and professional development as part of your postdoc throughout the year, the year or two that you've been here, then you're going to be better positioned to be able to manage with that, terrible situation there. So, as I said, it doesn't quite work as a repeating series of these things in the short term, but just the idea is that you want to be able to condense some of these things and get going. Now, wherever you are in your program or postdoc right now, you can do any of these things, right? This is just an arbitrary timeline that sort of paints a picture of what that can look like. So this is the one that we'll stick with, this broader one, and the categories that are here. So let's sort of go through and think about how to walk through this. So this first category is sort of making the most of where you are right now. So learning the skills necessary to be successful in the here and now, forgetting about the future, but how can I make the most of where I am right now? And so, these are professional development questions about, what you should be doing to make the most of your doctoral research or your teaching, if you're starting with teaching, or other aspects of your time at Penn. So who do you need to ask, and what are you meant to be asking them? And let's sort of explore that. So this is your broader network, right? These are the circles of connections that you have. And this is, again, a generalization of the types of people that you may be engaging with. But all of these groups have information or knowledge or connections that are going to be helpful to you, right? And so as you're thinking about your network, sometimes it's actually really useful to start listing out people that fall into these different categories, people that you know directly, because obviously those are the easiest people to establish connections with. But you can even sort of create a database that expands on that, or use databases to access some of these populations. Everyone here knows something, or knows about a career, or knows about best practice that you can leverage. So I just want to sort of paint that bigger picture for you right now. But in terms of the here and now networking, what can I do right now to help me right now? Obviously, the peers in your cohort, those in your same year or those in the years above you, have information that's going to be so valuable for you, that can point you in the right direction to things that they've learned and that they found helpful. So these are just examples of some of the questions that I think you really do want to verbalize. And I think the challenge sometimes people face is that it's hard to not necessarily admit, but it's hard to say that you don't know something, right? Everyone wants to be seen as someone who's in control. I know what I'm doing. Yes, I have it all sorted. It's sometimes hard to say, actually, I don't know. I don't know where this thing is. I don't know what this means. I don't know what this acronym stands for. I have no idea. But it's okay, right? And I think when you're engaging with peers in your cohort, it's easier to sort of be open to those, I don't know these things, and have these discussions about, well, can you tell me, how did you find out about these things? So, without, feeling like you have to totally say that I'm completely lost. I think it's okay, especially when you're engaging with your cohort, to be honest in terms of trying to find out this information, because eventually you will need this, or if you don't have it, that could be a challenge to you moving forward. So early on, beginning to ask some of these questions is helpful. So these are, framed mostly around research type things. What are some of the skills that you use to do research? What are some of the resources on campus that you use to help you, right? And these could be someone in a lab who has expertise in a certain procedure, or a campus entity that has training on a certain types of program that you can use. One of the most important questions here, I think, is, who has been someone who's supported you on campus? Your PI, your advisor. They can be helpful. They're not always helpful in many cases. Oftentimes people find, unofficial mentors, or just people on campus who can be supportive, and asking people about who they have leaned on to get support for, for their work. That can be really helpful to sort of, help you make similar connections and leverage some of those things. So that's an important question, I think, that you really want to be asking people, because those people are often hidden. The way that we frame that from the career services perspective is, sometimes on campus there are career champions, is how we frame it. People who give unofficial advice about, from their own experience, to help people make the most of, their career next steps. And so they don't advertise themselves as career champions, because it's a weird badge to walk around with. But there are people out there who are really supportive of students and postdocs in what they're doing. So finding those people is great. And then this last one, have you been part of any student postdoc groups or governments? This is important because as you're thinking about networking, these populations that share interest in a certain area are wonderful networking opportunities. Many of you hopefully are already part of some groups or areas, and I'm just going to sort of reinforce this idea that there's lots of things that you can gain from those types of experiences. Now, one of the things that Penn is trying to do, and I think with the technology it's slightly more easy for them to do that, is to bring together all of the many, many resources that exist out there that are spread around schools and different divisions, and have a single place where people can see those. And so this hub at Penn is one of the first attempts to bring all these resources together. You know, Penn is known, probably most academic institutions are known as very decentralized institutions. And because Penn doesn't have an official graduate school where graduate level resources are brought together, it can sometimes be hard to find these places. So, you know, this is just a really great sort of starting point. There's not everything here that you need, but, you know, I'll jump over to my screen over here. This is the hub at Penn. What you can do is you can look for graduate sort of level resources if you wanted to, but you can also look for resources based on different schools or types of populations that you are. And all of these just provide you with insights about things that are out there, right? Career services, nicely positioned at the top. I didn't do that on purpose, just happened to be there. But CAPS and Weingarten and the Penn Museum, I mean, these are broad interests, but they are at least give you an opportunity to see everything in one place and then explore that further. So if you haven't come across this yet or are looking for other resources that are on campus, this is a great way of doing that. The Penn Clubs is also where I sort of want to point you to, because the Penn Clubs then points you to another resource that lists many of the clubs, the student and postdoc clubs on campus. And that's a really great resource to have as well, because I think I heard that there's about 800 clubs that Penn has. They come, they go, new ones arrive. So that, you know, that it's challenging to know what those groups are. So, you know, the Penn Clubs is a separate site. And again, there are clubs that are missing from this site that I know exist that aren't here yet, because it's an ongoing process to bring everyone together. But again, you can search by tag, by keywords. So we have graduate level tags, and we use the word science here, and a whole bunch of science related clubs popped up when I did this. So the Penn Science Policy and Diplomacy group is a good one. The Penn Data Science group, I feel like that went fallow for a bit, but maybe it's come back, or maybe it will come back, or maybe there's an opportunity for you to bring it back. PGYs, Penn Graduate Women in Science and Engineering. So these are all things that provide you with networking opportunities because they are people who share common interests with you. So understanding that it's hard to set aside enough time, or you don't have a lot of time to set aside for other activities beyond your research, beyond your teaching, these experiences are really valuable, right? If you can spread them out across your entire doctoral or postdoc experience, you will have great opportunities to network, to learn about not only the subject matters, but to learn from all of the people who are in that club who have different levels of experience at Penn, managing some of the challenges that you're going to be facing. So a really great place to begin to look for opportunities to build those types of connections. Now, the question about how to leverage or how to use your limited time is an important one, because you can't join every group, you can't join any club. So really finding out which ones are likely to be the most effective for you is going to be helpful. And that's a networking question as well. And here's one way that you can approach this. So this is the Handshake platform. You all are on Handshake because you all got to this workshop through Handshake. If you go to Handshake and click on your photo in the top right-hand corner, click on My Profile, that's going to take you to a page where your profile is and where you can edit your profile and where you can add in some of your experiences, some of your student groups, some of your internships if you want to do that. Scroll down that page and you'll see that there's this Discover More Students link here. And what this does is it takes you to the Handshake community, right? Handshake is used by over something ridiculous, like 600 institutions in the US, and they're in UK and other places in the world right now. So you can look at anyone who's part of the Handshake community at any institution, there's like millions of them, and you know, make connections and explore what they're doing and things like that. However, you can also narrow it down to just Penn, right? So one of the options, because you are at Penn, is to say, just show me people from Penn. And then I've sort of identified 2 school years here, doctoral and postdoc. There's about 2,000 or so people with active profiles on Handshake who've made those profiles public. If you don't make your profile public, I don't think it's going to be here. If you make it public, it's going to be here. And making it public, I think, is to your advantage, both from being seen by employers, but also making connections with students. So once I've narrowed it down, one of the filters is actually student organizations, right? And these are student organizations that may have been part of your undergraduate, maybe part of your master's, maybe part of your PhD or your doctoral and your postdoc, right? So they come from different places, but it's a great way of beginning to say, well, I wonder if I can make a connection with someone who's been part of this group to learn about whether this group would be helpful to me, supportive of me, whether it would be a strategic use of my time to be part of this group, if I can add some value to that experience. So if you're interested in the BGAPSA, the Black Graduate and Professional School Assembly, here are a couple of people who are part of that organization. And it looks like Nana here maybe have graduated, but Hector's still here. So we can look at Hector's profile, see some of his experiences. So the organizations are down here. Some of the work experiences on campus are there. So that's interesting too. And then obviously there's the message button right under Hector's profile there, so you can message them directly through a handshake and maybe reach out and say, hey, I see that you're part of this organization. I'd love to learn more about it. You know, what's been your experience there? I mentioned PGYs from the HUBBARD Penn, so Penn Graduate Women in Science and Engineering, a couple of contacts there that you could reach out to and ask about their experience there, what they gained from it, what they contributed to it, how they put that on their resume, how they've intersected with employers as part of that, because oftentimes these groups do have opportunities to connect with employers in different ways. And then maybe you want to get involved in the SASGov, so the School of Arts and Sciences government, you know, across different disciplines here. So, you know, here's a list of people who are involved in SASGov, and as you can see from their experiences, many of them are also involved in other groups, like PPG Healthcare Consulting is another popular consulting focused group on campus, right? So you can learn about that by seeing that, you know, someone who's at SASGov is also doing something else. So Marshall here just graduated in May. Can look at his profile, can see, you know, his bio there. Can look at some of the other roles that he had. So in addition to being at SASGov, which was further down his profile, was a digital marketing analyst at OLI. And also part of PPG Healthcare Consulting. Now, you know, you can message Marshall, because Marshall's graduated, maybe he's connected less to Handshake. As alums, you get to hold on to your Handshake account for forever and ever and ever. So that it still works in that way. But obviously, you know, knowing that Marshall's graduated, you can also hop over to LinkedIn and see where Marshall is now. Marshall is a product strategy manager at 2U in terms of being in the EdTech field. So learning about how some of these past experiences may have helped him get to this role could be a great question to ask from a networking perspective. So, you know, once you begin to find this information on different people, you can begin to connect the dots. You can begin to ask bigger questions than just, what can I do on campus right now? You can ask about how those things you're doing on campus right now affect some of the future paths that you might be able to explore. Now, the only thing that you can't really do on LinkedIn is get an email address. You know, LinkedIn doesn't like to give email addresses unless you're first degree connections. I did a video on this tool called Career Shift, which is a fantastic yet scary tool that is really helpful at finding work email addresses for people. And so if you ever need an email address from someone in an organization and you really can't find it, Career Shift is probably your go-to way of finding that. That's where I would look first. My Penn, obviously the Penn alumni database for Penn alumni, so postdocs can't access that, but doctoral students can. People often have their personal emails in the MyPenn system, so you can contact them through there. But Career Shift, perfect at finding emails for most people in organizations that you might be interested in. So the peers in your cohort open you up potentially to the peers in these student groups and postdoc groups that you can be part of. And I think that's a really great way, as I said, of building community. A lot of what we hear from doctoral students and postdocs is sometimes, you know, the work is isolating, especially in some fields where you're not part of a lab. But even when you are part of a lab, it can still be isolating. You're there doing your work and you have to get it done. Building community is not only great for your personal wellness, it's also great for your ability to sort of hear other people talk about their successes, their best practices, and you can reflect on how you can do that too. And you can support people. And I sort of want to keep coming back to the idea of supporting yourself and supporting other people is a really important part of the graduate and postdoc experience. And so anytime that you can do that is wonderful. So the interactions that you're having with peers and with people in these groups, they give you insight into some of these questions, right? That you can learn best practices for how to make the most of your time, right now. People in SaskGov can talk about their experiences navigating the doctoral process or the qualifying exams or whatever that looks like, becoming a TA. Professional development opportunities. Anytime that you're joining a group, there's an opportunity for you to build new skills, communication skills, and other things like that. So that's great. Relevant skills you may also be building. So obviously, if you join PPG Healthcare Consulting, you're going to be building, consulting level skills. Now, you just want to be not cautious. You just want to be thoughtful about when you invest a lot of time into a very sort of niche area. The exploring career options is an important part of this process, because as you learn about different career options, you may find you're more excited by certain paths, or you gravitate towards certain paths. And that's where you want to look for opportunities to build relevant skills, right? You don't have the time to build relevant skills across 15 different career paths. So by doing some career exploration early on, you can then strategically identify those types of student engagements and skills building activities that are going to be most relevant to the career paths that you're interested in. So let's take a look at what that looks like right now. We're going to be drawing on different populations for this one, right? So mostly this will be alumni, so people who have left their programs, they graduated, they left their postdoc, they're doing work in the real world, as it were. These are the people who are going to have insights into the nuances of different careers that are out there. And so it's going to be important to sort of know how to find some of these people. But before you start reaching out to alumni and asking them about career fields, it's so important to have a foundational knowledge of those career fields. So again, I mentioned this yesterday because it is important to think about, but reading up around and doing your own research into what career fields look like is a really good foundation for helping you ask better questions when you find alumni. You don't really want to say to someone, so what is patent law or what is medical writing, right? Because you can find that out ahead of time. And then when you do find someone to talk to, you can ask better, more nuanced and more interesting questions that engage your connection more thoroughly. So this type of background research is going to be important here. So these firsthand or Vault guides are part of one of the resources that I've shared in the chat that you can take a look at and give you that background information. There's also a lot of passive networking that you can be doing around this too, and I think that's going to be an important part. So one of the initiatives that we have at Career Services is our PhD Career Exploration Fellowship program, where we connect PhD students to hosts on campus and beyond to help them network and make connections and have informational interviews so that they can learn about different career fields out there. So this is something that we start advertising in the end of next semester or the end of the year, and you can apply for these. And what we ask the fellows to do is, after they finish this program, is to write a blog post about some of their experiences connecting with these employers. And so that's free information for you to sort of say, well, what's it like to work at Poverty Solutions or Walmart or Merck or the Center for Teaching and Learning, right? So any experiences that they've had, you can live through those by reading some of their blog posts. And we have about 60 or so of those blog posts, and you can really explore what those look like and what those the value that they gave the fellow in terms of what they learned and what they gained from that experience. I put a link, this is again in the links that I just shared in the chat, to the PhD Career Exploration Fellowship. This is only open to PhD or doctoral students right now. It's not available to postdocs, but it is a great resource to have. And if I just jump over to, or actually I think I put it in here, these are examples of the hosts that we had this year. And these are sort of networking opportunities by themselves, right? We connect a host who's oftentimes a PhD or doctoral student themselves, or have been, and now they are in their job doing their actual job, and we connect the student to them so that they can have discussions, so they can be introduced to other people who work at these organizations. And so it's a really great way of having easy networking interactions that can be helpful. And so if I do jump over here to the Career Exploration Fellowship, we have a list of all of the fellows who've gone through this, all of the students from the 4 or 5 years that we've done this. You can see, which host that they were with. You can see the name of the host, and then you can see their blog post as they've written it. This is all on our website too, and you can learn about their experiences there. But also you have a name, right? A name and someone who's easy to connect with. So if someone was working in applied behavioral science at Walmart, you can find them and you can reach out and say, I'd love to hear about your experience as part of that CEF experience. So a great resource in terms of passive networking that you can leverage. The goal here is obviously to have conversations with people where you're asking your questions, right? These are questions that I don't know. I don't know what it's like to work here. I've read as much as I can, but I still don't know what it actually means. Can you tell me, right? Can you tell me what skills I actually need to do this based on your experiences? So, we frame these as informational interviews that you're having with people. Here's our guide to informational interviewing, a very quick and easy read, but it will situate you nicely in terms of how you can start having these conversations, even how you can start reaching out to people to have some of these conversations. So do take a look at their guide moving forward. So this was Alison. Alison was working at the CAT Center. And so, you could go and learn more about the CAT Center. It's one of the centers on Penn's campus. You can find their website. You can see people. Another way of sort of exploring this is obviously to leverage a tool like LinkedIn. Because if you're looking for people who work at Penn, if you go to the University of Pennsylvania school page on LinkedIn, right where I put the arrow here, you can see the 20,000 or so employees, people who work here. Now, sometimes postdocs are framed as employees, sometimes you're sort of looped together in that thing. But people who have jobs at Penn can usually be found by clicking on this, and then you can do a keyword search based on who they are. So if I put CAT Center in there, I get a selection of people who are affiliated with the CAT Center. Now, some of the good things about this is it tells you who's currently here based on if they kept their profile updated on LinkedIn, but also who was in the past affiliated with that center, because that might give you some insight in terms of the career trajectories that people take having been at a place. So I started at this place and now I'm here. You can get a sense of what that journey looked like, and maybe even reach out and ask them how they leveraged an experience to do that. So these are, in many cases, staff or faculty at Penn, but by using LinkedIn, you can get a slightly more nuanced perspective about who they are, the journey that they've been on, the skills that they talk about, things like that. So I encourage you to sort of leverage LinkedIn for this as well. The thing I want to talk about, or this is actually the Penn Center of Innovation, I did it again. Penn Center of Innovation has its own website, but this is going to give you some perspectives about who these people are and their different skill sets that are out there. There is the Penn directory, right? You can look on the Penn directory and you can find this, and you can use the Penn key affiliated version of this, and it gives you sort of the names and contact information of people. I did this for career services, and our data is actually not up to date. So that's something I'm fixing from our side. But LinkedIn may give you a more up to date perspective on this, because people tend to update that. But who knows how you go ahead and update the Penn directory or where they pull their information from. So LinkedIn can be a great tool just to keep up to date, as well as the websites that these centers operate on the Penn website. From your perspective, though, probably what you're most interested in as you're thinking about career, next steps are the alumni themselves and how to leverage that. So, we've really been pushing this tool on LinkedIn as a thing that you should use and leverage as much as possible. Hopefully, many of you have come across this already. I do like to go through this because it's such a useful tool moving forward. But what you'll want to do here is go to the University of Pennsylvania school page and click on alumni. And again, what I'll do is I'll give this a spin, as it were, in real time by putting this up here. So here's my LinkedIn profile. I'm going to search for University of Pennsylvania up in the search bar here. And you can do this for any institution, even if you've never been there. You don't need to be an official alum. This is not an alumni group. This is just a free access thing that you don't have to pay for. But you get to the University of Pennsylvania school page. I'm going to click on alumni. And today it's going to show me the 191,000 alumni and current students. So it's not just alumni, it's also current students and postdocs and certificate students and all the sort of combination built together. But what's so great about this is it's basically an enormous searchable database that allows you to filter down very specifically, right? So it shows you where they live geographically. If in the future you think you have a geographic preference that you'd like to work on, San Francisco, London, right? You can find people who are in there right now. Where they work right now, so most of it Google. Apparently Google's at the top of most lists of the universities that I found. This is just the overall numbers, but if you wanted to find a specific organization, you can do that. We'll play around with that in just a second. The role that they play in an organization. So if you're a student or a postdoc at Penn, probably education or research are the categories that you fall under, that you've given yourself. All of these other roles can be things that you can take a look at as well. What they studied, so this is finding people like you and what they're doing. These don't match directly onto the Penn group majors or programs, but you can get close enough if you sort of click a few and add a few in here, again, just by adding it in there. What they're skilled at and how you're connected, right? So these are all great things to look for. Now, some of the things that I like to do this is sort of stretch, how far you can go with information and what that can give you. So if I were a postdoc and I wanted to apply for a K99 grant, you could say, well, who else has applied for that, who might be a Penn alum, who might be able to share some of their insights into that. So if we do this, let's see if we can pull anyone up here. So 15 alumni who have K99 R00 in their profile somewhere. And if we scroll down, we can see who some of these people are. So Mallory here, postdoctoral fellow, currently on recently awarded a K99 grant from the NIH. So very quickly, I can find people who have gone through a process or have something, an award, a grant, that I might want myself, that I might want to apply to. And I can reach out to them and say, I'd love to hear some of the best practices that you use to do this. Who did you speak to? What resources did you look at? How did you position yourself? What did your CV look like? In many cases, people will be happy to share some of those experiences with you, and that can be really beneficial at saving yourself a lot of time. A lot of these people will have had the grant and now are moved into a faculty position, so you can ask them how they leverage the grant itself to do that. How did they talk about it when they're applying for faculty positions? How much did that come up in the conversations that they were applying for? We can clear this. We can look for something more anthropology related. Wenner Gren, I think, is an award that we can use here. So Catherine is a UX researcher. Scroll down to her background: Master of Science at Penn, but a PhD in social anthropology at University of Washington, and then probably somewhere here we go, dissertation fieldwork grantee, the Wenner Gren Foundation. So, you can leverage, still a Penn alum, just from a different genre, as it were. You can leverage all of these things to find out about grants and awards, because usually in their LinkedIn profiles, people will list the awards and grants that they get, right? So it becomes a keyword that you can search for, which I think is really helpful. Let's say you're interested in data science, and you want to connect with people who've been in doing, Kaggle competitions, because you want to know how beneficial that is. So we throw Kaggle in as our keyword. Again, 20 people here. Some people work at Kaggle, some people are doing other things. If we scroll down, every one of these people has some background. So Samantha looks like they are a postdoc at Pfizer. Let's see what their background was. PhD in genomics. They were part of the Kaggle team at the Penn Data Science Group, specifically when it was active. Again, I still don't know if it's active. But if you're interested in knowing the value of those types of competitions for being doing computational genetics at Pfizer, then Samantha may have some of those answers for you as well. So much that you can gain from even alumni to help you with where you are right now. If we do. If we clear all this, the one thing that you can't really do on this, which is semi-frustrating, is you can't really say who are the PhD students or the doctoral students. You can in terms of who the alumni are, right? Because you can't filter by the degree that they have, just the subject. If you want to find students, right, so we can use PhD as a keyword, as an example. Most of the people that are going to come up here, if we look at what they say there are, the education and research, most of these people will be PhD candidates. So if you're trying to find more connections at Penn, then using PhD as a keyword, I think, is helpful. Now, if you're trying to find people at Penn who are PhD students who are skilled in Python, for example, then you can certainly do this as well, right? So we have 911 people who have some background in that, but maybe you want to know the people who are in your field in particular, bioengineering, right? And so these are hopefully then PhD students in bioengineering or connected to bioengineering with an interest or skill in Python. So if you needed to learn that skill, gain expertise in that skill, or just partner with someone or collaborate with someone, this might be a great way of doing that. So the handshake community that I showed you before and this used together, I think, are great to sort of connect with people in different ways. Now, the other way that you can use this tool is from an employer perspective. So if I go to the Google page, they have a similar type of database. It's people for them, not alumni. And it's pretty much the same, except for rather than where they work, it's where they studied. So it's looking backwards in terms of what that looks like. So, if I'm interested in, what does working on a subject like ethics look like in Google, then this is going to pull up anyone who's, has ethics in their title. These aren't Penn alumni now, right? These are just Google employees. But I can certainly narrow it down by pen if I wanted to. So Wharton pops up here. Wharton and University of Pennsylvania are both different categories. In fact, the School of Medicine is also another category, right? So you can add all these things together. But I can also look for connections, right? Who are the people that I may not know doing ethics at Google, but I know someone who does know them, right? So all of these people down here are secondary connections, which means that I don't know them, but I know someone. I know someone who does. So Sabrina here. I have a connection with Tara. Tara used to be our administrative coordinator in our office at Career Services. Tara knows Sabrina. If I really want to reach out to Sabrina, I could ask Tara to help me start that conversation or introduce me, or at least, I could use Tara's name when I reach out. Hey, Sabrina, we both know Tara. She said you'd be a great person to reach out to. So, lots that you can play around with there to get a sense of what's going on. If we do, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, again, you can narrow it down by what do people with a history background, do in that field, right? So that way you might get a sense of some of the skills or knowledge areas that might be applicable to roles that they have. And again, these are all people here. They're not all pen, they're not all my connections, but I can filter on that to really make that a meaningful way of doing that. So hopefully that sort of makes sense in terms of strategies that you can use with this tool. I'm going to jump back over here. Again, the goal is to have some of these informational interviews. So you can read up about them, you can learn about them, but then find the people who can answer the questions that you have and try to start these conversations. And within this guide, we have like a sample. Here's how you can reach out to people that you don't yet know, just to get you started. And this is not a script. You can certainly adapt it. But going through people that you know who know other people is a fantastic way of doing that. And we're more than happy to give you insight into ways to do that. Now, as you've learned about the career fields, as you move into the stage where you're almost applying, that's when you can start connecting with recruiters, right? You don't want to connect with a recruiter when you don't know about the field, you don't know your value, or you don't have the skills necessarily. You want to connect with recruiters when you have all those things together. And in fact, going back to those that board I just showed you, under the the role that they play, human resources is a category that you can choose. And if you choose that category, there are 4,500 HR people who are Penn alumni. So this is still back in the Penn alumni thing. And if I use recruiter as a keyword, there's a whole bunch of people there that you can look and you can see that they're recruiting. They're recruiters in all these organizations that you may be interested in. And you can find those people, right? So these are all Penn alumni. You share something in common with them, but they're all working as recruiters in organizations that you might like to work at. Again, don't run out and try to connect with these people because everyone tries to connect with a recruiter. Use them strategically, right? Make sure that you are leveraging the relationships that you're building and your knowledge before you reach out to recruiters. A shout out to the 3 recruiter panels that we have left this week. Tomorrow on application materials, Thursday on interviewing, and then Friday on negotiating. If you want to learn more about how sort of recruiters engage with the population, then do sign up for one of these sessions here because it's really helpful to hear their perspective moving forward. And then finally, we have leveraging your connections, right? So you've done all these things, you're near the end of your program. What do you do with some of the connections that you've made? Here are just 3 things that I think are really handy to do. One is to name dropping cover letters, right? When you're writing the cover letter, the last paragraph of the cover letter is, why do you want to work at this organization? Why do you want to work at this, in this role? If you can say, having had a great conversation with one of your staff members who's a Penn alum and learning about X, this makes me even more excited. That's a really great way of closing the gap between you and the hiring manager in terms of how they picture you or perceive you. So name dropping connections that you've made in cover letters is great. If you find there are new, recent alumni or former postdocs who have just started in a position at an organization, they have probably worked with a recruiter at some point to get to where they are. So if you can find them on LinkedIn and ask them, can you connect me with the recruiter that you worked with? That can be a great way of starting those conversations with recruiters as well. If you've spoken to someone and then you go ahead and apply, you can let someone know that you've applied. Thank you for sharing information about this role. I've gone ahead and applied for this position. I just want to let you know that your help was great in terms of positioning me for that. At that point, they can then potentially volunteer to advocate for you. They might say, well, send me your materials and I'll make sure they get to the hiring manager, right? They have some agency to help you. They can't help you if they don't know you. They can't help you if you haven't built a strong relationship with them, but they can potentially do that. So you're maximizing the potential, not necessarily the actual, but maximizing the potential that they can then help you further, which is a really great thing to do. All of these people are networking opportunities, right? Just to reaffirm that idea that you can find helpful connections everywhere that you look, and being strategic about it is part of the process, and we can help you with that at Career Services. Sometimes it is overwhelming. And so not only do you need a system in place to sort of track who you're connecting with, sometimes you just need an emotional support buddy to help you sort of navigate through the, fitting this into your busy schedule, learning from what they've learned from their connections, sharing what you've learned from your connections, right? If you pair up or group up, then you can sort of pull together all the information that you're gaining from different people's networking, which makes your whole process much more efficient. A few resources then to wrap us up for today. Here's a post, and again, these are all in the links that I shared in the chat. Here's a post to this idea of passive networking, things that you can be doing on LinkedIn, sharing articles, following people that can lead to long-term success. Small things that take very little time, but that can build up in terms of their impact. The Aurora platform, we talked about this last time. This is custom built for doctoral students and postdocs. They have a career exploration video library where you can search by skill sets and competencies. And so, this is very much passive networking. You're listening to their stories. You can gain so much for this, but it can also help build confidence in how you can have similar conversations with people, right? You're a fly on the wall for some of these conversations. You're then going to apply that as you have your own conversations moving forward. And they even have a workbook that accompanies the videos that you can go through and make sure that you're sort of keeping yourself focused on what you're trying to achieve by watching them. You're not just passively letting the information flow through you without doing anything with that. So do take a look at the Aurora platform, because it is a guided resource with these workbooks. I can't sort of highlight it enough because I think it's so helpful. I mentioned CareerShift. This is just a screenshot of that, but the video I shared earlier, will give you great insight into how to use this. This is a big platform that does lots of things. My favorite thing to do is, though, to find people's emails. But don't tell people you found their emails on CareerShift, because no one really knows what CareerShift is. You just happen to have their email. The big interview platform that we have obviously focuses primarily on interview prep, but they have a whole networking video curriculum that you can take a look at. They also have their own version of a networking contacts worksheet, which I think is so important when you're engaging with people, just to keep yourself organized and making progress.